movies on this show. We talk about light-hearted subjects like entertainment and entertainment media and music sometimes, maybe music. I don't know. I'm a musician, guys. Hey, the tall Danielle. How's it going? Happy Monday. Uh, what a weekend it was, wasn't it? I am exhausted. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm emotionally exhausted from this weekend. You may or may not know this, but I live in Los Angeles, and it is one of the cities right now that is in utter turmoil. Maybe not as much as Minneapolis is, and Minneapolis has experienced a massive moment in their history. We've experienced a massive moment in our culture as humans and our culture on this planet. Hi, Mom. Just saying how exhausted I am. I'm tired. Woke up this morning here with the garbage trucks outside in a shell shock around 6:30 this morning, thinking, oh, the riots are right outside my window. In fact, the riots are not right outside my window. They are a mile up the road, so I can hear them. I can hear pops and booms and police sirens all night, which is, I'm realizing it is more of a war zone type of situation. You start to feel like, I can't imagine what it's like to be in a war. I can't imagine what it's like to have been in the riots during the 60s when there weren't as many available rights that are on the books, as it were. I'd say they are available rights, but they're not given. they're not afforded to people that we have in this country. People say, in theory, we all have the same rights, but in practice, we can clearly see that this is not the case. What's up, White Bee Jester? What's up, Simple Pleasures Pod? Hello. I'm going to pronounce all of your names. Hey, Ismael, what's up? Today, in particular, we are going to get to it eventually. We're going to talk about movies. Surprise. Heist movies in particular. I do like heist movies. I do like a good planning where the bad guys are justifiable in some way, where we are on the side of the bad guys in a movie that's a heist. Like maybe they deserve what they're gonna steal. Maybe we justify their crimes in a heist movie. A lot of people are getting upset. Everybody, Inside Man, oh yeah, that's a good one. There's a lot of stuff going down, guys, in the world. I just want to talk about this for a couple minutes because I do live in Los Angeles, and I do live in these riot zones, or just next to them, adjacent. I'm like literally in Hollywood, so it's Hey Rachel, what's up? You're in Hollywood-ish too, so I'm sure at night you can hear the pops and the booms as well. Because there's rioting going on. There are people who are taking advantage of an image that they know they could take advantage of to do their opportunistic crimes. Just like in a heist movie, maybe you create a diversion. Maybe you send in people. Maybe you try to make sure that other people will be blamed for your heist. I'm sure that that's happened in movies. For instance, the heist that happens in the beginning of The Dark Knight. You guys remember that? Do you remember how each one of the members of the Joker's crew killed the next one because they were promised a bigger portion of the pot? Rachel, you know this one. You're a big fan of the Joker. Each one of the Joker's crew, when they were robbing that bank at the beginning of The Dark Knight, which is an incredible sequence, it's like two guys, they kill the next guy, they take the money from that guy, and he gets killed. He gets whacked all the way on up to the Joker, who collects all of the money after all of his little cohorts killed each other. It's kind of a brilliant Joker move. But there are opportunists right now who are like the Joker, who just want to see the world burn. And that's That's what's going on in a lot of places. There are these people. There are people who go, hey, there are a lot of minorities out. There are a lot of people of color protesting. The Black Lives Matter movement is out there right now, active. How do I make it look bad? How do I take advantage of the fact that there's lots of people in the streets? Because I'm an opportunist. I'm a looting scumbag. Someone's calling me. I'm not going to answer it. Sorry, Instagram. Somebody tried to call me. How dare they? Don't they know that this show is on 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time? Aristotle Full Throttle. But I tell you, there are opportunists right now, and there are a lot of them. And, you know, in LA, it's particularly gross because there are people who are like, this is a great TikTok opportunity. This is a great photo opportunity. There was a police car that was placed on the corner of Fairfax and Beverly the other day, right outside of CBS Studios. And people were yelling, it's staged, it's staged. It was just an empty, abandoned cop car, an outdated cop car, an old one. What's up, Ewa? Talking about the abandoned cop car in Beverly and Fairfax. And there's video of it all around, and of course it gets vandalized and destroyed, and then there's people jumping on top of it, posing for pictures. Because this is the society that we're building right now. We're creating a more narcissistic society, and it's kind of funny. What we should really try to counter all that with is empathy. That's what we're here for. Aristotle Full Throttle here is here to promote empathy. Aristotle, we should, and that's just not like, hey, empathy as an abstract idea. It's like, hey guys, imagine what it's like to be George Floyd. Imagine what that is like. Imagine what it's like to be a black man in the United States. Imagine what it's like to look like George Floyd in the United States. How you must feel every day seeing images like that for the last 400 years. It's just really nutty. A lot of people think, oh, well, you know, we elected Obama. We live in a post-racial society now. Tell that to George Floyd. Tell that to everybody who feels how they're feeling right now. And they're letting you know how they're feeling, how we're feeling, how you're feeling, how everybody's feeling. Every single one of my friends, regardless of how they look, how they appear, is feeling the same thing inside right now. And it's a complete injustice. It's just complete wanton destruction. Like the killing of a human being in the street is something that, you know, that's what's America up to now? What's America up to these days? Making America great again. What are we working on? What kind of greatness are we trying to get back to? Rodney King 30 years ago? Well, we've outdone ourselves. It's hard. It's hard to stomach. It's hard to watch. It's hard to imagine. But imagine what it's like. Imagine what that's like. And I think right now, people more than ever seeing it clear as day like that are feeling something, and they ought to. And people get mad that there's looting and there's destruction and there's just all of this and there's a right way to do this. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a right way to do this. There's also a right way to police. There's also there is no There is no making sense of a senseless act. There's the but trying to do this whole like shifting the blame. The blame will always get shifted. There's no, and it's really particularly hard in this case to shift the blame. It's really hard now because every other time, why didn't the guy just stay on the ground? Why didn't Rodney King just stay on the ground? I'll tell you why he didn't stay on the ground. Because he's laying face down getting beaten up by several police officers who are just kind of, who are menacing him. And at some point in the human brain, we go, I could lay here and continue to be brutalized, or I could try to survive. And if you go back and watch the video of Rodney King, he tries to get up. He's trying, he struggles, but these cops are all standing around taking shots at him with their nightsticks and their fists and their feet. And you go, this is just a Friday night for these cops. They've done this before, clearly. This time it just happens to be on a video. And that's around 1990, early 90s, and that was like the dawn of it has to be on video for me to believe it's true. And even though it was on video, people still didn't believe it was true. They were like, well, he was doing a crime. Cops are allowed to completely brutalize and maim and menace and beat the living daylights out of a human being for no reason. No reason to use that kind of force. The guy's clearly not fighting back. He's clearly, you're able to take him into custody at that point. But this was a Friday night for those cops. And that guy who murdered George Floyd does have a record, does have a history, which we can all look into. But with just ease, he murdered a man. And I know there's more footage of 2 more cops sitting on top of George Floyd, and why they're all not being brought in for murder immediately shows you the problem. Shows you the problem with the system. Shows you that the level of protections that police have and the incredible inequity that exists in the society. And this is how it lives out. What's up, 420 artists? We're getting a little somber here on Aristotle Full Throttle. We're at like 1/4 impulse power right now. Nathan knows that one. That's a Star Trek reference, actually. So, I hope you guys are safe. I hope you guys are being safe. I hope you guys are being showing support, if you support the protests, and condemning the looting. It's not a good thing. But it's opportunists jumping in on a good trying to get, well, the getting's good. They're like, hey, where are the protesters today? Maybe we can also smash and loot some stores where they are, so that, you know, because it's easier to blame the Black Lives Matter movement. It's just easier to do. It really is. Think about it, guys. Where are you gonna go where you can have a good cover? We're talking about heist movies today, and this is actually appropriate. You go, okay, well, here's a huge group of people who are marginalized and blame shifted in society. Why don't we take advantage of that movement and those optics and steal shit and for our own personal gain, but at the detriment of a movement, at the detriment of, and I get it though. I get some people are just frustrated at the cops and angry with the cops, but there are some things that moved me this weekend, which were like, hey, why don't the cops talk to the people? Why don't the cops march with the people? It seems so incredibly horrible and counterintuitive and ridiculously missing the mark that there should be protests and then riot gear to approach protests like in a confrontational, combative. It's like, this is the perfect opportunity to do what some of these protests have done, some of these marches, some of these cities have done. This is the perfect opportunity to march with the people, to march, to show your solidarity. If you're a cop, I don't think there is a cop right now that's like, yeah, what that policeman did to George Floyd was some kind of procedure, was warranted in any way. I don't think if you're a good cop, and there are plenty of good cops. My father was volunteer fireman for years and years, and you know, he knows the guys, and there's bad eggs, there's good eggs everywhere. And you got to learn how to weed them out, figure them out, not that let them get away with shit like this, not go unpunished. Maybe that's why we like heist movies. Look at this, see these segues? Because heist movies, we get away in the end. But these people, these opportunists who are looting and causing destruction, I think that there's a gray area also of people who are just so angry. They don't know what else to do. What else can you do? How do you deal with a situation where a man is removed from the planet, and there's literally days and days that go by without any retribution? And it's right there, clear as day, and that's just what we saw. And I mentioned Rodney King, and I'm talking about George Floyd. However, these are two instances that we just happen to see, guys. Wrap your mind around this. The police report for George Floyd is available to the public because it's public record. It's a matter of public record. If you read the police report, where is the mention of what we saw? Like, does it read like what we saw? It doesn't at all. And so just think of all of the police reports that come back with someone who's maimed or murdered. Anybody, let alone black people who are disproportionately imprisoned in this country for the same ass crimes. You know, I'm talking about 420 artists. A lot of people in this country who go to prison for misdemeanors and for like a long ass time go to prison for offenses that other people don't even get taken in for. So it's just, we're living in a tumult. We're living in a cray time. I'm exhausted. My whole weekend was just, I heard police sirens and pops. That was my weekend. I woke up this morning to the sound of a garbage truck, and I thought the riots were outside my window. So it gets a little bit intense. Yeah. Yes, nature abhors a vacuum, as does society. Will, you know, it's funny you bring that up. And I can always count on you, Will. Thank you for joining us, as you do almost every day. Pretty much 99% of the time. Thank you for being here. Yes, nature abhors a vacuum. And that reminds me, you know, in Star Wars Episode 7, they really should have had a power vacuum situation. Like, kind of like the way The Mandalorian is right now, the TV show. The Mandalorian has a power vacuum. There's like, I'm shifting gears here, guys. There's there are the Mandalorians. They're the old remnants of the Empire. And then there's like the New Republic building up. And it would have been so interesting to me to see where everybody fits. The Jedi, the Sith, the Empire, the Rebels, and the Mandalorians, etc. How they would all struggle for power. But no, they started back with the boilerplate A New Hope in Episode 7. Episode 8 tried to change all that, tried to make a situation where we were like, all right, now Episode 9, the way Episode 8 ends, It seemed as if Episode 9 were to be a completely new invention of Star Wars. It like opened up a door to be a completely new invention for Star Wars. And speaking of heist movies, Rogue One, guys, Rogue One, definitely a heist movie. Pretty cool heist movie. They had to reshoot it a couple times, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I was talking to my friend the other day about what is the ultimate order for Star Wars movies. But not to move on too quickly from the George Floyd situation. I just really do want to say, guys, look after one another. Look after yourselves. Just be careful, okay? There's another thought I want to say before I launch into all this stuff. I mean, I have a lot to say about this, and you're just going to have to go along with this. But I got a lot of texts and phone calls this weekend from friends who are checking in because I'm in LA and they want to see how it's going and they want to see how I'm doing. And, you know, being black and brown in America is in the spotlight right now for as long as it will be until the next time this happens, which is a cynical approach to look at this. It's a cynical way for me to look at this, but it's the only way I can look at it. And on account of the fact that I grew up with Rodney King, and I grew up with Amadou Diallo, and I grew up with Abner Louima, and I grew up with Arbery and everybody. I grew up with all of these people, and it just seems like a thing that happens every couple years that is like to a point. Listen, this probably happens a lot more than we know because of the police report versus the video that we saw the other day. You guys can compare them yourselves. I don't know what kind of mental gymnastics you can do to say that this was not a murder. You know, you don't just sit on somebody who loses consciousness. If you are sitting on a human being, if you're sitting on an animal and it loses consciousness, there is nothing in my mind that can convince me that you do not intend to murder that animal or that human being. There's nothing in my mind that try to talk me out of that. Try to change my mind. I'm the guy right now at the lemonade stand. Does this change my mind? Putting your knee on a human being's neck while they're passed out for several minutes is murder. Change my mind. I get that the DA had to bring this douchebag cop, this killer cop, up on a charge of third-degree murder and still have not yet arrested the other 3 officers, but had to bring this cop up on a charge of third-degree murder. And that it was explained graciously to one of my friends, to me, by one of my friends, that, hey, the DA has to find a charge that they can pin them on and make sure that they can prove in court so that they can go away for the maximum amount of time. Because if you try to say that it was first-degree murder, it means that they'd had to have arrived with the plan to sort of find, like, premeditated, thinking about it for a while, showing up with plans and equipment to execute somebody. But come on, I mean, he's a cop, he's showing up with a gun. Guy's ready to shoot it at any point, I'm sure. It's very strange that the two worked with each other at some point. Yaug, welcome to the chat on YouTube. Explain what you're referring to, because the YouTube is about 30 seconds, 45 seconds delayed, and I'm not quite sure what I was talking about 30 seconds ago. You might be talking about Rogue One. You could be talking about Rodney King. I don't know. It's important to just recognize that these things, to me, I don't know how you guys feel, you know, depending on your background, but to me, I'm just like, here it goes again. or here at least people can see it, and then it becomes real for them. However, people who are black and brown in the United States are just like, oh yeah, America. Someone once said to me, and it's hilarious, and I still think about it, and it was recently actually. I said how I wanted to move to Spain one day and live in Spain, because I found a back door through Spain. My biological father is from Dominican Republic, which is Afro-Caribbean, and my mother is Irish-Italian. So my genes, it's interestingly enough, if you can get citizenship with Dominican Republic, it is a Spanish-settled country. So if you move to Spain and you have citizenship in a Spanish-settled country, they can fast-track you to become a citizen of Spain. So I was like, that's interesting. Maybe I'll try that one day and just become a Spanish person. I could speak Spanish for the most part, más o menos. And I figured I would try to move to Spain. And someone said, Spain, they're like really racist. And they were like, I don't know if you know this. That's what they said. They said, I don't know if you know this, but Spain is really racist. And I said to them, I don't know if you know this, but America's really racist. I don't think they had necessarily an ability to know that on account of not necessarily being a minority. So my point is, this society in particular, American society in particular, the one that I've grown up in, I grew up on Long Island and in New York. I've traveled the country many times. I've seen all different corners of this. I've been to 46 American states. I've been to Canada. I've been to Mexico. I have a decent amount of exposure to North America. I've been to Europe several times. I've been able to create a little bit of a larger worldview than perhaps someone who has not traveled that much. And I can understand and perceive how I'm perceived in every part of this country, and it's different. Where I grew up, in particular, the town I grew up, whenever I go back there or that part of Long Island, I grew up in a very, let's just say I was one of maybe 3 or 4 people in my grade who are not white. So I grew up in that environment. And I go back there and I'm like, oh yeah, wow. Because I live in LA now, and LA is obviously coming apart at the seams. But out of all of the cities in this country, there are just so many different flavors of racism, but there's also so many different flavors of acceptance. And it's pretty cool. There are some places that will, like, all different kinds of tolerances, all different kinds in this country, and all different ways to celebrate our differences. Guys, we're different. Everybody's different. The difference I've experienced as a human being on Long Island, or say like the burbs out in the country, in the sticks, the difference I feel are, I grew up in an area where they were like, oh, you're different. That's weird. Now I grow up in Los Angeles among a bunch of Hollywood types where uniqueness is celebrated, so that everybody's like, oh, you're different. That's cool. So there's like there's a bit of a there's an acknowledgement of the difference, but a different response to the difference. I think we need to acknowledge difference and celebrate it, or be curious about it and enjoy it, instead of ignoring it and saying that there is no difference. There's a difference. Different cultures have different things. And in America, in America, everything's black or white. So in America, I'm black. In America, if I go to the Dominican Republic or somewhere, they're like, oh, you're mixed, or you're Dominican. Dominicans don't consider themselves black or white or anything. They consider themselves Dominican. If you go to Brazil, there are 5 layers of black or whatever. There's white, there's light moreno, there's moreno, dark moreno, and black. We don't have that here. We have you're white or you're black. And if you're black, you go in this box. And white people can be like, what kind of white are you? I'm German white, and I do this, and I'm Irish white, and I do this, and I'm Italian white, and I do this. Then they're like, black culture. It's a monolith. It's a thing. But you can't be like, oh, well, my parents are Kenyan, or my parents are from Belize, or my parents are from Barbados. You know, like there's no necessarily like a celebration of the distinctions in America. And it's sad. It's sad. It's just it's monolithic, and it's perceived, I perceive it like, you know, like I would say that in America, it depends on where I go. It really does. It depends. Like white people will be like, "Oh, you're black," and black people will be like, "Oh, you're mixed." So where do I go? Where do you go? I say I'm brown. I'm a brown guy. There's no getting around that. Look at me. I'm brown. Does that deny the fact that I enjoyed fried plantains as a baby? Because my father would cook them on the stove, and I could smell the fried plantains, and that's like part of Dominican culture, Caribbean culture. Does that deny the fact that my mom's Irish Italian and that she would freaking boil chicken? She'd make meatballs, spaghetti and meatballs. Like, am I not allowed to be a part Italian because in America? It's frustrating to me. The cop knew George Floyd. He worked with him in a club a while back. This is Yao saying, club owner. They were working together at the same time. It's just that Chauvin worked outside. The security guards were inside. Wow. That's interesting. That actually, Yaug, you know, Yaug, you say that makes me think a better case for first-degree murder. They have a pre-existing knowledge of each other. Put the guy away for life, please. Make an example of the fact that he's a freaking terrible cop. Let me catch up with Will here. The officer was outside security. Yeah, interesting. So we got a simultaneous thought here. They both worked in the security in Minnesota club. The team was composed. Yeah, this is information that's new for me. And flavor racism. Yeah, it's true, man. Rachel says, convincing people to stop being racist is almost as hard as to convince them to stop eating meat. Yeah, that is true, Rachel. I'm going to get on my vegetarian soapbox one day also. Right now, I'm just talking about this, but it's true. Rachel, there's two things that I think in 100 years, someone asked me once, what do you think? You know how 100 years ago we look back and we say, how the hell did they live like that? Why would they do something like that? Like The Jungle, for instance. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, with like how there was unfair employment practices and horrible conditions for the food that was being manufactured. And we're like, oh my God, that's such a travesty. That's horrible. How did they could perpetuate an industry like that? And I'll tell you what they would say about today 100 years from now. Two things. Climate change. They would go, all right, so everybody knew there was climate change. So all the humans, they had the information. This is 100 years from now. They're looking back at us, 2120, and they're like, the people knew that the world was going to crap environmentally and that they were contributing to it. By all scientific accounts. By all scientific accounts. Stop with the fringe one scientist who's like, I disagree. That is not a consensus. I mean, he's not part of the consensus, scientific consensus. They're going to be completely outraged that we just kind of went along with it and continued doing it. But this is human behavior. That's the first thing. The second thing is the meat industry. I don't think people are going to look back, oh, there's more cops. I don't think people are going to look back at now and think that the meat industry, the way that we procured meat, was all that good. They're going to look at the horrors of it. It's literally not allowed to be filmed because it's so horrific, the way that meat... Listen, if you want to get meat... When I still ate meat like 7-8 years ago, I'd go to the local market and buy meat from the local farms and stuff like that. And I think meat should be like $100 a pound. But we're going to talk about that some other day. If you want meat that badly, you know, it should be hard to come by. It should be hard to get. But that's a whole other divisive situation. And I agree with you, though. It is very difficult to have people let go of their deep held beliefs, particularly when you show them evidence that their deep held beliefs are destructive and maybe not that true. Nationality doesn't extend beyond whites unless you're a recent immigrant and they have very pronounced cultural identity that could be isolated. I remember when you told me what Cyndi Lauper said to you. Yeah. I could talk about that story. So Cyndi Lauper, for instance, guys, I was in a TV commercial I was going to be in a TV commercial with Cyndi Lauper, and I was going to be her bass player in the commercial. I was hired to be Cyndi Lauper's bass player. I don't care how this sounds, because I'm just going to repeat to you what happened that day, and people are going to get angry, mostly at Cyndi Lauper, because I was angry at Cyndi Lauper, but some people get angry at me for just literally repeating the event that happened. I'll just tell you what happened. And then I was saying this on Twitter that day. I was tweeting about it, and I was getting a lot of people hating me. But I was like, listen, you can hate me all day. I'm literally reciting to you the words of your hero, Cyndi Lauper. She hired me to perform as her bass player in a TV commercial. I was there. I showed up, and then she asked me what I was like. It's kind of complicated, so it's not that complicated. It's pretty straightforward. She switched me out for a dude who's got like long dreadlocks and darker skin, unbeknownst to me earlier that day. And she just basically was like, oh yeah, now he's going to be the bass player. And I was like, well, I was hired to be the bass player today. And she's like, no, I want the other guy because you're a white guy. And I said, excuse me, Cyndi Lauper. And she said, no, I want my band to look diverse. This is what Cyndi Lauper said time after time. Girls just want to have fun. From Queens. I'm from Long Island, so I got a little bit of an attitude with her for a second. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, no, I want this other guy. I want him to be the bass player in the band. And next time. You can come back next time. So she fired me on a commercial and she repeated 4 times. She said to me, well, you're a white guy, and I don't want a white guy in my band. I don't know. I've never been mistaken for a white guy except for by Cyndi Lauper, which is weird. It's weird. It sounds weird, right? You're like, what does even that mean? That's what I was thinking. I'm standing there going, what is happening right now? And I was like, Cyndi, I'm not white. Did you take a look at me? And she's just like, you're a white guy. Sorry. And I don't understand that situation, that moment in my life. I was weirdly fired because of the perception of my race. I was fired from a commercial. I did not get residuals. The other guy who had a darker complexion, cool, nice guy. His name is Shakespeare. Literally, his name is Shakespeare. I'm not joking. I ran into him recently. It was funny because I followed up that situation. I called SAG, and I was like, is it cool if someone does this? And they were like, no, that's not cool. That's actually bad. And then they were like, we're going to investigate this. And they asked everyone on the production if this happened, even though she did it to me in front of the entire the cast and crew, because the cast was like, did she just say what I think she just said? And I was like, yeah, I'm leaving now. And I walked out. But she did that in front of the cast. She did that in front of the crew. The production team seemed mortified. They still paid me like a print fee, they gave me an extra $500, I guess, to keep me quiet, because I missed out on many times that. But I called SAG and they investigated it. Nobody on the production team admitted that it happened. Nobody, I guess, they contacted admitted that it happened, which is just horrible. But then I ran into Shakespeare again on the set of a commercial last year. He was an extra, And he came up to me and he's like, "Oh my God, Aristotle from the Cyndi Lauper commercial. I was just telling her how she fired you for being a white guy." So it's like they know it still. It's still in everybody's head that witnessed that. But I'm just saying, it's a complicated matter, ladies and gentlemen. It is a complicated matter on what is perceived and what is real. And Hollywood, I think, is just as guilty still. Hollywood, it just happens to own cameras and have a lot of people who feel things, I guess actors and stuff. So these people who go on camera are like, I want this to change and I want that to change. Meanwhile, everybody who's running Hollywood is still just as racist as they ever were. It doesn't matter to them. It's not a factor. It's no factor to them. It's just, how does this look and how do we make more money? What is going to be like? Entertainment influences culture, no doubt. So culture influences entertainment. And entertainment wants to be on the forefront of what is going to be marketable in the future. So when these actors and stuff get out there and they're shouting, you know, people know what looks good and will make them money in the future. All the higher ups and stuff like that. Yeah, we know he's going to plead down, so it'll probably end up being manslaughter. Carries a 15-year max in Minnesota. We'll be lucky if he even serves 5, in my opinion. You know what, Yog, you're right. Police officers are protected sometimes unduly. It's a tough job. Being a cop is a tough job. That cop was not in any kind of distress. That cop was not worried for his life. That cop was purposefully, methodically, in my opinion, from what I saw, taking the life of another person because he could. Because he could. Tell me that you can't. If you're leaning on somebody and they pass out and you're still leaning on them, they pass out, you're still leaning on them. They're clearly incapacitated. That goes from subduing to murdering. I don't see any other way around it. Yeah, I definitely had to call that shit out with Cyndi Lauper. It was weird. Yeah, her tokenizing standards were not being met. You're absolutely right. Like, I guess I did not have dark enough skin. I did not have long enough dreads. I did not appear the way she wanted to appear because it was just all appearance anyway. It doesn't matter. It was a bunch of actors mostly who could sort of play. Like, I happen to actually have been a professional bass player for many, many years. The guy Shakespeare was like, I don't play bass. That was extra. That was like the pièce de résistance. Dude doesn't even play bass. But I gotta tell you, I can't stomach a Cyndi Lauper song ever since I heard that. And every time I tell that story, I hope that I just take 2 or 3 fans away from her, because she took several grand away from me. Also, guys, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's pretty humiliated to be called out by what someone thinks you are in front of like 50 people. Doesn't feel good. I was very pissed off. It was palpable. People were like, "Oh my God. Ugh. Eek. Cringe. Constant cringe." Yeah, Eva. Yeah, let's get rid of Cyndi. Let's talk. She's just she just turns out to be like a horrible person. I mean, who knew? She just wanted to have fun, and then she's kind of like, you'd think she would be way bigger than she is now. I don't know. She was a massive icon. It's kind of tough when you're this close to your icon, like a huge fan of Cyndi Lauper before this. Huge fan. Like, just musically, she's really gifted. But looking at, like, now I just can't separate talking to some lady from Queens who was telling me to get lost because I'm a white guy. And I was just like, mm-mm. No, thank you. We're talking about heist movies today on Aristotle Full Throttle, every day at noon, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. What's up, 13? It's hard to contain my upset. It's hard to contain. It's hard to ignore what's going on outside my window and in our backyard collectively if you're American. If you're a human, it's going on in the world. I think I'm going to mention again how I was called several times by many people over the weekend about how I'm doing and how I'm, being in LA and everything. And I'm fine. That different. I'm as outraged and upset about the event as everyone is and ought to be. But I don't know, like, a lot of people seem to be really upset this time, and I don't know if it's black and brown people. Black and brown people are like, yeah, guys, this has been going on for hundreds of years. This has been going on. Now that you see it on Twitter or you see it on TV, now it's real to you. Now it can be realized. Now it's like, well, now that we're sitting inside all the time and we need something new to get upset about, well, let's get upset about George Floyd. I don't know. Maybe that's too cynical, but everybody should be this outraged about it. It's just shocking and wrong on every level. But I don't see what it's going to do. It's sad. I don't see what this is going to do. People are like, but it's so different this time. Don't you see? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really see that. I see this happening again. I see, like, our murderous, racist cops going to, like, instantly vanish. Have we gotten rid of that problem? Has the system suddenly teetered back and swung back in the other direction? Never. Since never, not once has it yet, ever. It's still swinging. Will it swing back? No. Maybe. Let's say maybe. Yeah, cancel Cindy. What's up, Dooney? We're talking about heist movies. In the best way possible. It's hard to talk about something other than things other than this. It's hard to talk about what's right in front of our face. There are some really good heist movies, though. Heat, that's a good heist movie. Score, like that. Ocean's movies were fun. I like heist movies where they gotta, like, learn a karate to do the heist, where they gotta learn a dance, like Ocean's 12. The dude, the French guy, he had to, like, do, like, kung fu, like entrapment, when Catherine Zeta-Jones had to do, like, moves to get through the lasers, because there's always a laser obstacle course to get through. I like movies like that, because you got to learn a kung fu, you got to learn a dance. It gives you a mission. It gives you the character something to do. And it gives the audience something to rehearse, to learn, to know when it's done right and when it's done wrong in the situation. And it's always good when something goes wrong. So that's what I like about movies, when something goes wrong. This wasn't in the plan. This will be over once the next news story hits, when most people are in phase 2. I agree with you, 13. People are upset now. People are protesting rightly. People are protesting righteously. But then there are opportunists who would just jump in and be like, well, let me take advantage of the fact that, how do I make a movement like Black Lives Matter look worse? Now, this could be conspiratorial, but bear with me on this, guys. if you want to organize enough to create marches like the white supremacist marches in Virginia and stuff like that, like if you want to organize to that level, I'd say there's like a few people of different interests who are peppered in, who clearly want to incite things for their own personal gain, for their own TikTok, for their own Instagram, for their whatever story they want to do, for their vanity, for their narcissism. They want to feed it. They also want to make Black Lives Matter look bad. They want to jump in on it. They want to take a bunch of peaceful protesters who want to do the right thing and make a stand and make a statement, and then tarnish the image by jumping in and causing violence and taking advantage of a situation of a group of people, just any group of people gathered in a public space. If I'm a criminal, if I'm a guy who's like, I like to break things and steal things, and I don't care about consequences because I'm sociopathic, because perhaps I grew up in a situation that encouraged sociopathy, the lack of empathy. Maybe I grew up in that situation, so I see there's a bunch of people in the streets. This is a perfect opportunity for me to break into a store and rob it. But I get like why people want to protest in the rich neighborhoods and be like, hey guys, stop hiding in your homes and listen to what's going on the streets. But breaking into stores and stuff like that, it's just, you know, come on. Come on. Cut it out. You can't tell someone like that to cut it out, though. So, like a sociopath, you can't. They don't have any compunction. It's hard. You got to just avoid them. Narcissists and a sociopath, very difficult. You just got to avoid them because they'll be like, well, I'm right and I'm always right and you're wrong and it doesn't matter. These are the rules, but they don't apply to me. Those are the rules for you. There's rules for me. There's no rules for me, and all the rules are for everyone else. And how my morals depend on how I'm feeling that day. I have no fundamental spine. I have no through line as a human being, ethically. I just do what I think I should feel like I should do right now. Don't be that way. Maybe take some time to pause and consider what you value most in life. What you think is important. I think right now we're learning that maybe it's other people are important. Because ultimately that's all we have is each other, right? That and heist movies. And hot dogs. Vegetarian. Guys, I had a corn dog for the first time this year. But it was a vegan corn dog. It was good. I get the appeal. I understand it. Fully. Who doesn't like a corn dog? Anybody? If you don't like a corn dog, well, then that's what you don't like. I'm just ranting today because I'm frustrated. I bet you're frustrated too. What do you do? What do? We talk about it. We figure it out. We figure out what we need to do to ourselves because all we can do is adjust our own behaviors. All we can do is sometimes if we have deeply held beliefs, it's good to take a moment to reflect on those beliefs and whether or not they should still apply or are valid in a way that is fair to other people. Is it fair if I do this? It's really the categorical imperative by Kant, Immanuel Kant. I think it was Kant or Descartes. Descartes was, I think, therefore I am. I don't really know much about philosophers. You're listening to Aristotle Full Throttle 5 days a week. Yeah. Guys like that said, hey, is this okay if I do it? If I do this, is it all right if everyone did this? It's very simple. It's flawed, but it's very simple. Look, I think it's okay to do X, Y, Z. Therefore, it should be okay for everyone to do X, Y, Z. I don't think it's okay to do that. So therefore, I don't think it's okay for anyone else to do that. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Eat corn dogs. They're delicious. Yeah. Thank you, Will. Will's like my right-hand man here. He's got all the thoughts that fall through my mental couch cushions. But yeah, the golden rule also is very true. That's another one. Jesus. I like to see this. There's a picture of Jesus doing the Sermon on the Mount, which is really great photo. It's a funny meme. And Jesus is saying like, love everyone as I have loved you. Listen, I'm not a Jesus guy. I'm not a religious guy. In fact, I'm the opposite. I think that people have free will and people can decide for themselves what's right and wrong. And if they take the time to deliberate, they will come upon similar values, I'm sure, as humans we have, generally speaking. Like, shouldn't kill people. Not a good thing. We've learned that over time. Humans are a cooperative species. But there's a picture of Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount, and he's like, love each other as I have loved you. And then there's like a little blurb of a person in the crowd going, but what about gay people? And then there's like another blurb of the person, but what about like the Palestinians and stuff? And like another blurb. And this guy's like, what about like trans people? And then Jesus says, did I effing stutter? It's that simple. It's that simple, but it may not be easy because humans are very tribal. They want to say, I'm right and you're wrong about whatever happens. But when you see something like the murder of George Floyd, it's real hard to say that cop was right in any way. But there's going to be people. There are going to be people who justify that, and then they're going to politicize it. And if you ask my opinion politically, we would not be in the situation for several reasons. Had we not had a pandemic, which was weird because everything shut down, but we had a pandemic because of the worst leadership in American history is currently. So imagine this. You've got the worst economy since the Great Depression, a pandemic, incredible civil unrest, and the worst leadership in American history all at once. There you go. And away we go. Here we are. This is the world we live in. I feel like Christian Slater in the basement in the movie Pump Up the Volume. Will knows that movie. Right now, I'm Christian Slater in his basement on his own guerrilla radio show talking about the ills of society and playing some dope-ass music, except for the music part. The categorical imperative is basically the restatement of the golden mean, the basic principle of operating on the basis of mutual empathy and respect. Very true, Will. I appreciate the clarification on that. That's really cool. And Well Gone Weird, thank you for joining me and hearing me. And I want to hear from you guys how you're feeling. You guys could jump over to AristotleFullThrottle.com and watch the rest of this live feed. It's going to shut down in about 90 seconds on Instagram, but you could travel over to AristotleFullThrottle.com and we can wrap up this discussion. We'll never wrap up this discussion. It'll be an ongoing discussion forever. It will be. But what we got to do is figure out how to adjust, figure out how to approach a problem, figure out conflict revolution. This is what it's called, guys. Conflict revolution. That's what's happening right now. Conflict resolution is also important. Some people don't know it. Some people don't even care to do it. Some people don't understand or have an interest and an ability or an interest in gaining the ability for conflict resolution. They just want conflict because it feels good, because it helps them get all excited. Their limbic system's on fire and they love it. Their adrenaline's coursing. They're like, I got this. And then they come down, and then it's called the abuse cycle. But people want to go back through it over and over again, get their fix, get their adrenaline fix, get their body in a hyper state. And they have no interest. Like my friend put it the other day, if you were to talk to a crack addict about anything, and they would probably say If your solution to this problem is me not smoking crack, then I'm not interested. All right. The Instagram feed just died. Sorry, but so I don't know if they heard the last bit of that, but we had about 8 seconds left on the Instagram feed. I'm going to share that to IG right now. I'm going to share it immediately because I tried to share the other show the other day and it didn't quite share. Sometimes the internet's... all right, guys. Bear with me for just a few seconds because this is what you should do when you're on live streaming. Heist movies. Hold on. Thank you for... Hey, what's up, Will? Heist movies and the state and the world. I think that's a pretty good title. All right. Hashtag George Floyd. Remember his name because... Say his name. Say his name every day. Hear his name. Think his name. It's important that we keep him in the forefront of our consciousness. It really is. We need to keep these situations in perspective. I mean, this is the outrage we feel. This is the outrage that we have. Now we have to deal with it. But guys, we got the outrage with the school shootings. School shootings are down. It's because nobody's in school. What do we do? Thanks, Will. I appreciate you coming in. You said you're always precise with the psychological analysis. I appreciate you coming in with the deep cuts, with the fleshing out of the ideas. It really does feel rough out there. It hurts to see all this going on. It hurts to be in America right now. It hurts to be alive in general. It hurts. This hurts. Ouch. What's the first thing you do? You cry. You get smacked and you cry. Ouch. I was so comfortable in there. Now I'm in pain. I'm annoyed. I was comfortable, and now you brought me into this world. Now I'm going to be uncomfortable for 88 years. And then I can be comfortable again. Maybe along the way I'll get a lazy boy. Maybe I'll go to a couple pool parties and relax at the beach. And that will be nice, but it will not be as nice necessarily as when I was in there and you took me out. I want to go back. I mean, arguably, people constantly trying to go back. I mean, yeah. That would have been an off-brand joke. I'm not gonna... That joke was off-brand. But I'll think it and laugh to myself. Everyone's worried about their brand right now. It's so true. People being out there throwing shit. I don't know. People like that freaking asshat and his brother. Those two brothers. You know who I'm talking about. The ones that are on the YouTube guys. Will knows who I'm talking about. The two YouTube guys that are the top YouTube. Blonde-haired white guy. Can probably get away with so much stuff more. And you can, guys. You can. People just assume you're good or better when you look like these guys look. They just assume it. It's sad. It's America. Life is definitely pain. Life is pain. We're ripped from the womb and thrown back into the grave after a life of pain. That's a good band right there, Life of Pain. We play folk. We play folk songs. We're called Life of Pain, House of Pain. We sing some of their songs, sure. Yeah, the Pauls, Jake Paul, Luke Paul, John. Like, what are their names? It's like freaking biblical. Mark, Luke, Paul, Jake. Those Paul guys, they get in trouble. Here's the trick to their whole thing. They go, I'm gonna go get in trouble, or try to get in trouble, and I'm gonna video it. And then they video it, and people are like, oh my god, this dude's crazy. He's trying to get in trouble, and he gets like 10 million views. And then he's like, I'm gonna go try to get in trouble, and he does get in trouble, and he does cause a problem, and the police do get involved. He gets 100 million views. So you go, wait a minute. So there's like really no way to lose here. The more in trouble you get, the more views you get. The more bad behavior you do, the more you're rewarded. The more attention you are rewarded. So there's really nothing incentivizing those guys from not being douchebags. There's nothing incentivizing them. Yeah. Life of Pain. They got a follow-up Soundgarden. Soundgarden was a great group. That was a great group. They did come out with another album. Was it another? Yeah, it was one album. Alice in Chains has come out with 2 albums in the last 10 years with a new singer. But Soundgarden, and it's not its original lineup, but its most popular lineup, its most famous lineup, because they had an original bass player on Ultra Mega OK. And I think he's also on Bad Motorfinger, but then I think Ben Shepherd came along. Either he's the bass player, either on Bad Motorfinger or the one after that, the Super Unknown, which is probably, guys, the best grunge album. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's the most artistic of that era. Super Unknown. People are like, Pearl Jam, though, but Nirvana, great bands, sure. Soundgarden had the best album, though. Alice in Chains, incredible. Jar of Flies, perfect. Yeah, Hero was playing bass. But Super Unknown is kind of incredible. It's kind of an incredible sounding album. And it's one of those albums where it's just everybody in the group contributed. So it's so fully rounded. It's such an artistic expression. Everybody in that band has writing contributions on so many of the songs. A lot of them, words and music by Chris Cornell. Some of them, words and music by Kim Thale. Words and music by Ben Shepherd. It's pretty neat. Ben Shepherd or Ben... Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's Ben Shepherd. Ben Kenny is the bass player for Incubus. I was just thinking of Ben's who play bass. That should be a band that they start. Super Unknown is incredible. It just starts out with a kick and it takes you on a journey. STP is also one of the better musicians of that era, the better creative musicians of that era. I love Pearl Jam. We'll talk about Singles and all of the bands in the movie Singles and the grunge scene. But Pearl Jam is one of those bands where you go, guys, you are Pearl Jam. What happened? What happened after those first 2 albums? You've had like 20 albums since those first 2 albums, and out of those 20 albums, you've had about 10 good songs. You had 2 albums that were incredible, a 3rd album, which was, it was pretty good, and then like 20 albums of what the hell is going on with this group? Forgettable songs. Very forgettable. I mean, I give Pearl Jam a hard time because I was such a huge fan of theirs, and then I dropped off. Yeah, Matt Cameron is like a nice contributor to songwriting. He's written a lot of Pearl Jam songs now that he's been in Pearl Jam for the last 20 years. But Matt Cameron, he's a pretty good creative guy. Although I gotta say, out of Pearl Jam's drummers, my favorite was Dave Aberzies. A lot of people don't like Dave Aberzies, but he was the most funky, loosey-goosey, flowing, just fit the vibe of their jams, because half of their name is Jam. So when you got a guy like Dave Aberzies who's just so loosey-goosey, flowy, and like and funky and rhythmic, he's very much more feel-oriented, whereas Matt Cameron is He's a freaking machine. He can like, the dude is a freaking, like he's a powerhouse of a machine. The dude can play hard, and he could play interesting beats that are just ridiculous. However, for the Pearl Jam's milieu, sorry guys, I think my camera's trying to tell me I'm done. All right, well, I'm gonna go. Here it is. We're back. I think my camera's overheating, so we got the color bars. Aberzees from following Steve Salas. Yeah. Pearl Jam, I mean, I listened to the new album once, and I can't remember a single thing off of it, which is not a good thing. I didn't feel like going back to it. I was like, this is pretty good. These guys are pretty good. Didn't feel compelled to listen a second time, but they do have a new album, in case you're interested. Dave Aberzees is out there doing his best Pete Best. I think you'll know what I'm talking about, Will, on that one. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow at noon. Aristotle Full Throttle. Stay safe, and just take a moment to reflect. Know that we're going to get through this somehow, but if you're black and brown in America, you might not be experiencing as much shock from the situation, although the outrage is real. But the shock of it is, it's just like, how can this keep happening? How does this keep happening? Whereas I think people who may not have to think about how they appear when they leave their house, and depending on what part of the country they're in, you know, I go to different parts of this country looking like this. Like if I'm in Iowa, I know it's like, I feel like I'm in Iowa. Like I am made to know that I'm in Iowa. If I'm in certain parts of the country, it becomes quickly apparent to me how I'm being perceived and that I'm being perceived. So it's not something that this is just not a very huge surprise to me, but it's the worst. But this is the worst. Hopefully enough white people are upset about this that it'll cause change. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm Aristotle Full Throttle.